there, welcome back to another review, this time of the 2017 horror thriller Get Out. Now, this is a film that the trailer definitely did interest me. I heard all kinds of good things about the film, even a lot of my good friends enjoyed the movie. I just didn't get around to seeing it until recently. Actually, I saw it a couple days ago, and wow. I absolutely loved this movie. So that goes to show you that there are sometimes films that critics are really impressed with that I too also am impressed with. And this was definitely one of those films for me. This is easily one of my favorite films of the year. I thought this is one of the best horror thrillers, horror films I've seen in a long, long time. This is right up there with It Follows, The Babadook, Housebound, stuff like that. This is a modern day classic in its genre for me personally. I honestly could not think of a single thing that I didn't like about the movie. I was blown away by this film. And I actually want to watch it again. I mean, that's how much I loved Get Out. Now, Get Out is directed by Jordan Peele, who I am a big fan of. I really enjoyed his work on Key and Peele, the sketch comedy show on Comedy Central. I really loved his work on Mad TV before he was before he started his own show on Comedy Central, Key and Peele. I really liked Keanu. I had a lot of fun with that film. And for a directorial debut, man, he absolutely killed it. He really did. He did an amazing job directing this film and writing it as well. He wrote and directed this movie. He performed dual duty and he ended up hitting 2 home runs, back-to-back homers, right out of the park. Very impressive by Jordan Peele, and I can't wait to see what he's got up his sleeve next. The film stars Daniel Kaluuya. I might be saying his name wrong. I probably am. Daniel Kaluuya as Chris Washington. Uh, really a powerhouse performance. There was a lot of depth to this performance that I thought was really, really wonderful. He played a character that was likable. He had a nice personality to him. It was a horror film with a male lead, which is also another thing that was really refreshing to see. This whole movie was refreshing. I mean, it did remind me in some ways of films like The Stepford Wives or Society, but it still was its own movie. It still had its own uniqueness. It was still different enough that didn't feel like I was watching a retread of some other previous film or franchise. Now, it also features Allison Williams in her acting debut as Rose. She also does a really great job. I can't believe this is her first acting role because she was so great in this film as the lovable girlfriend of Chris, who those two are make a really cute couple, and she pulled the wool over my eyes big time because I did not see the twist coming with her character. I didn't see it coming at all. And normally I'm pretty receptive to that kind of stuff, and I just did not see that coming. And in large part, that's because of her performance. She just was so innocent and so sweet. I just never even thought that she could have ever possibly been capable of doing what she would end up doing in the film. Bradley Whitford as Dean Armitage, her father, Rose's father. This is one of his best roles out of his entire career. He was really smarmy, and he played a great villain. One of many villains in this film. Catherine Keener also did a really spectacular job as Missy, her mother, the hypnotist, so to speak. Caleb Landry Jones had a bit role as Jeremy. He was there. He was solid. Lil Rel Howery as Rod, Chris's friend. He stole the show from me. He was hilarious. The TSA guy. TS motherfucking A. I love that guy. It was a welcome bit of levity for the film. It just Jordan Peele really knows what he's doing. He has a film that has some pretty serious subject material. It's pretty heavy, but then he knows that in order to make this experience more palatable, to make it entertaining, to make it a classic, and a film that you can watch over and over again, you got to have those moments like that with Rod Williams. You got to have the moments with Chris. You got to have the elements and stuff where it's not too heavy and it's not too dark. And I really think he ended up Jordan Peele ended up writing a fine line between the dark, uh, disturbing elements of the film, but also throwing in there the lighthearted moments that just it was a really wonderful mix of humor as well as horror. You also have Betty Gabriel who plays Georgina, a house. Basically, what she's like a maid, and what you think is just a maid, but there's more to the character. You find out later. She was unsettling. So was Marcus Henderson as Walter. Now, and there were also a few other actors like LaKeith Stanfield as Andre Hayworth and Logan, Stephen Root as Jim Hudson, who's this owner of the Hudson Art Galleries. Eric Alexander plays Detective Latoya, and you also had an uncredited cameo role by Jordan Peele. From Key and Peele, not Jordan Peele. I mean, he also had an uncredited cameo sort of thing. His voice was the one that you hear in the film that keeps saying the line. I'm trying to. I'm getting it right here. I want to make sure I have this line correct. Um, just bear with me here. Trying to make sure I have it correctly. Okay, he's the one that says, "A mind is a terrible thing to waste." Jordan Peele's voice is in the film saying that line. But Keegan-Michael Key of Key and Peele, he has an uncredited appearance as a photo of an NCAA prospect displayed on Rose's laptop near the end. Now, the film, it cost about $4.5 million. Jordan and crew, they did a great job using their resources. Every bit of it is on the screen. It didn't really look like a low-budget film. Uh, the box office was really good for this film, and I really do feel it deserved it. It made $193.7 million in a $4.5 million budget, so it was definitely a hit. The film features music by Michael Abels, which I really liked. I love the music in this, and I love the soundtrack choices. I like the song at the opening credits. I like all the bits, different type of music they used in the film. And it features cinematography by Toby Oliver, which is really there are certain shots in this that are downright gorgeous from a visual perspective, but also he did a great job tying in with the unsettling, surreal aspects of the film. This is a very surreal movie, and the cinematography definitely did add to that feeling, and it didn't take away from it or detract from that feeling. It's edited by Gregory Plotkin. It's a very tight, tautly wound film. There isn't really any sequences in it that I thought the editing was bad. It has some practical effects here and there with some blood and some little few other things. It's all done well. There's really not a lot of CGI. I don't even know if there is any. Maybe a little bit of like CGI fire somewhere, but for the most part, almost everything that can be done practically is done practically. The film is shot on a set. It's shot on location. I also love how the cinematography and the directing by Toby Oliver and Jordan Peele. There's no color filtering. I could tell that immediately that this was just shot normally like a regular film. There was no color filtering added after the fact. It was just shot that way and it stayed that way. And I love that about it. It didn't need color filtering. It's completely unnecessary. So anyway, Get Out. I'm going to kind of break this up into a spoiler and non-spoiler parts, so to speak. So I'm going to break this up into spoilers and non-spoilers. So when I start the spoiler part, I'll let you know. When I'm done, I'll let you know. I just don't want to ruin this for people who haven't seen it because this has a really great twist that I even didn't see coming. And I definitely do feel that if you have not seen this film, that you should check it out. Uh, if you like old school horror, if you like a mix of horror and comedy, it's not the most hilarious thing ever, but there definitely are some moments that are funny. But if you want to see something fresh and new and a horror film from the year 2017 that actually feels like it's adding something new to the genre, then definitely check out Get Out. I do recommend it. I highly recommend the film. And that's why I'm doing this spoiler and non-spoiler division, so to speak. Is because I don't want to give it away. I don't want to ruin it for people who haven't seen it. So check it out. Trust me, it's definitely worth a watch. Even if you don't end up liking it, that's okay. But if you are at all curious about this film, or if it sounds interesting to you, I definitely recommend you watch it. Now, now I'm getting into the spoiler parts because I'm going to be talking about the plot and I'm going to be going down through it real quick, and then I'm going to be giving my thoughts on a few certain sequences and so on. So the plot deals with Chris, who's played by Daniel Kaluuya, and he's a photographer, and he has a girlfriend named Rose, who he's really close with. And it starts out innocently enough, where he's asked by Rose to go out of town and meet her parents, and it just just doesn't really seem like it's much of a big deal. It's just meeting parents. Going out of town and meeting the parents, meeting your girlfriend's parents. It shouldn't be a scary ordeal or anything. Well, the movie actually does open up. Before that, it opens up with a crazy scene that just grabs you right from the throat from the beginning and just sucks you right into the movie. You're just like, all right, I'm in. And it starts out with this black man named Andre. He's walking through a suburb late at night, and he's trying to find something. I think he's trying to find someone or somebody, and he ends up getting kidnapped by this guy in a white sports car, and he's got like this what looks like a night mask on, and he grabs him and then just drags him away. And he's on the phone earlier. He's talking to his friends like, "I'm not very comfortable, man. Here, it's I don't feel very safe here in the suburbs." And he just eventually just tries to get away, but he gets caught. And you're like, "Whoa, okay, that's pretty crazy." So right off the bat, you're like, "Okay, what the fuck? What the fuck was that?" And then you get the whole stuff with Chris and Rose, and they're a great, wonderful couple. Daniel and Allison have wonderful chemistry with one another, and so they go on take a weekend trip to meet Rose's parents, neurosurgeon Dean, played by Bradley Whitford, and psychiatrist hypnotherapist Missy, played by Catherine Keener. And so everything seems to be okay at first, but then there's all these little subtle things. And what I really loved about this film, among multiple other things about this movie that I really liked, is how subtle it was with its horror, how subtle it was with its strangeness, its surreal moments, and how great its buildup was. It built up those moments so well that when you finally get to the climax and to the reveal, it is so rewarding because it doesn't give away everything early on. It actually does build up to something. And I really like that. That adds to the suspense. It adds to the thrill. Adds to the thrills, and it makes the reveal and the twist and the climax all the more satisfying. And a good example of this is how you first see that their servants are black. That definitely is something that you take pause at. You're like, oh, okay, that's a bit weird. And then you start to see them acting weird. And there's always something, and it's not just them. There's other stuff around the house and the ways that the parents interact with Chris. There's just something that just seems just a bit off. And it just gets even more off kilter as the film goes on. And I just love how it starts off like that. Just right off the bat, just grabs you in. And I didn't really think it was a slow starter. I thought it automatically started out with this like great what the fuck opening, and then they go visit the parents, and then there's all these little subtle weird moments that make you go, "What the hell?" And then I really did relate to Chris because his reactions would have been mine too if I was in the same situation as he was. Like, what the fuck is going on here? You creepy ass bitch. Just fucking crazy ass bitch. So yeah, so there's always these little subtle things that are off. Chris is disturbed by what he perceives as strange behavior from the black groundskeeper and housekeeper Walter and Georgina. That night, he's invited by Missy to talk about his mother, who died in a hit and run while he was 11. Now, before the weird stuff that I'm talking about with the black groundskeeper and housekeeper is stuff like the groundskeeper guy. He just starts running at him in the middle of the night. Like Chris is just walking out, getting some fresh air. Here comes the groundskeeper guy, just running at full sprint, just right at him. And then it looks like he's going to run into him, but of course he changes course and goes the other direction. But it's that kind of stuff where you're just like running in full sprint. You're just like, what the hell? This is just fucking weird. He had a conversation with Georgina earlier because he caught her unplugging his phone because he kept realizing that his cell phone was always unplugged, so it would never had a charge. And so he's confronting her about it, and she's all like sing-songy and smiley about it. She's like, "Oh, I didn't mean to do that." It's very creepy and unsettling. And the performances by those two are really superb. Honestly, those moments where the servants were all acting weird were scarier to me than a lot of the other horror films I've seen lately. It's this human horror, this whole thing where you have people who look like they're human. They act like they look like they're human. They breathe and on the outside they look human, but they act so weird and not human that it just is such a disconnect that really just freaks me out. Uh, and it definitely does. It reminded me of some of the stuff where people are too happy, to the point where it's just disconcerting. It's the it's like you keep that up for a little bit, it's not happy anymore. It's creepy, and that's how I always felt in like a customer service situation. Like I've worked at the movie theater, and my boss would keep telling me, keep smiling, always have a smile on your face, and I always thought that was just creepy. Because imagine if you're a customer and you're going up and getting some popcorn and a drink, and this is what you see. Hi, how you doing? What would you like today? Oh, a large popcorn and a large drink? Okay, would you like anything else? It's a very freaky thing. And that vibe is perfectly captured in this film with these sequences with these uh, servants. So then you have this trippy scene where Missy is hypnotizing Chris and puts him into this sunken place, which the way they did that was really well done. Chris wakes up the next morning. He just believes the encounter was just a nightmare, but he realizes that Missy has hypnotized him to quit smoking. That was kind of referenced earlier in the film. Guests arrive for the Armitages' annual get together, where various older and white couples take an uncanny interest in Chris. He meets Logan King, a black guest who has this sort of bizarre demeanor about him, but there's something familiar about him too that really makes him feel. It just makes him feel off. It makes him unsettled. It makes him like, what? Something's wrong here. I know that guy. He calls his best friend, TSA officer Rod Williams, who tells him about his hypnosis and the unusual behavior of the black people in the area. He later tries to stealthily take a picture of Logan with his phone, but a camera flash causes Logan to freeze. His nose starts bleeding, and then he starts freaking the fuck out. He starts yelling at Chris, and he's like, "Get out! Get out! Get out of here!" And Dean claims that Logan, so it's just nuts. but then he gets treated later by Missy. Missy gets him to be back to his normal self, and Dean is trying to tell him that, oh, it's nothing, it was just a seizure. Chris isn't convinced. I'm not either. I'm like, that's bullshit. That's not a seizure. You're full of shit, Dean. I don't care if you're a neurosurgeon. You're bullshitting me. And Chris and Rose, they leave the party to go on a walk because Chris is upset. He's freaked out. And he convinces Rose to leave with him that night. And while they're away, there's this crazy fucking scene where Dean is holding this mysterious auction under the guise of a bingo game where there's a picture of Chris at his side and Jim Hudson, a blind art dealer, places the winning bid. It's a slavery auction with these rich old white fucks playing bingo, but really what they're doing is they're bidding on Chris. And at this moment, I'm thinking, so it's mind control and it's a slavery thing, and I'm like, well, that's pretty that's ballsy and pretty clever. All right, cool. But then it takes it in a totally different direction that just completely blindsides me. And I love it when films do that. I really do. So while packing to leave, Chris sends a picture of Logan to Rod, who recognizes Logan as Andre Hayworth, a past mutual acquaintance of theirs, one of their friends. Of course, now he's understandably alarmed. Chris tells Rose that they need to get out of there, but as he attempts to do so, the whole family, including Rose, blocks him. Because earlier, Chris actually finds this box in a room. Like he's in the room, Rose's room, and he hears something fall, and then he goes into this closet and he finds this red box. And he opens it up and he sees all these different pictures of all these different black men that Rose has been with. And then it starts to click. And then I love how the film doesn't give away the twist of Rose's involvement with this whole thing until the main character figures it out. I love that. I wish more films would do that. Let us figure out everything at the same pace as our protagonist is figuring these things out. So I was just in shock, just like he was. I'm like, what? But I believed her. I believed that she loved you. They were gonna leave together, and you're gonna do all this, and she's in on it too. Holy shit! This white woman be crazy, man. Holy fucking shit! This shit is bananas. And so, all right. So she's in on it. She blocks him. She spends all this time stalling, looking for the keys, and then eventually, just absolute. Allison Williams was so great with this role because she could just turn on a dime. She could start out like this, lovey girlfriend, and then just turn on a dime and be this stone cold psychopath, sociopath. He's like, give me the keys, Rose, give me the keys. He's like, oh, these? You're not gonna get these. I'm afraid I can't give these to you, Chris. It's just like, whoa. So he's fucked now. He tries to escape, but he gets incapacitated by Missy's hypnosis with the spoon and everything. Rod becomes concerned when Chris does not return home to answer his calls. He discovers that Andre Hayworth went missing years ago, as well as a bunch of other young black men. So he tries to get help from the police, but they all laugh at him. And an admittedly pretty fun sequence. Chris wakes up strapped to a chair. He's presented with a video that explains that the family, the Armitage family, has perfected a method of immortality, sort of pseudo-immortality, in which Dean transplants the brains of his older friends and family into the bodies of younger black people selected by Rose and hypnotically prepped by Missy. I just, wow. Holy shit. It's like, it kind of reminded me of that movie called Blood Relations. It's like a late 80s movie. Probably barely anyone has heard of that film. There was brain transplants and stuff going on in that movie. I wasn't really a big fan of that film, but this one worked really well. So this process is called the Coagula, and there's this really eerie video that is played on this old TV while Chris is just sitting there strapped into the chair, forced to watch this creepy video, where uh, the father, Armitage, he's going in and explaining the whole procedure, and it's like a dated video as well. So he was talking about how they spent years perfecting this, and finally his son has figured out the way to get the procedure to work. So, excuse me if there's any noise or something. I hit my microphone there by accident. Just using my hands all over the place. This is crazy. It just, oh man, this movie, just talking about it, it's just, this whole twist just got me out of nowhere. I was just like, where the fuck did that come from? Brain transplants and putting the brains of rich old fucks into the brains of young black men. Holy fuck. Holy fucking shit. So, and I'm definitely feeling for Chris, man. I'm rooting for him big time to get out of this situation because he's in big trouble right now. And so he's tied to this chair and he's forced to watch the guy who bought him and bought his body, Jim Hudson, played by, I believe the actor is Stephen Root, and he's basically wants to use Chris as a host so he can see again. With Chris being doomed to exist in the sunken place for the rest of his life as Jim controls his body. When Chris asks the understandable question, the big question, why black people? Jim says that each person has their own reasons, but black people are just currently in fad. Seeing that wool is protruding from the claw marks on his armrest because he's been clawing it because he's nervous, Chris uses it to plug his ears, an extremely clever move, blocks the hypnotic commands in the video, allowing him to remain awake. When Jeremy comes to collect him for the surgery, Chris beats his ass with a bocce ball, and then he goes in and kills Dean with a deer head and stabs him with the antlers, and blood spraying out of his neck. It's all done practically. It's not CGI blood. It's practical blood. It's corn syrup and food coloring, the way that blood should look like in a film. He kills Dean. He kills Missy because Missy tries to attack him. She tries to use the spoon thing on him, and he swats the cup of tea and the spoon away from her before she was able to do anything. This is just a very crowd-pleasing series of events because I really like this character. I wanted him to make out of this insane, ridiculously just unbelievable, crazy situation. I wanted him to get out of this alive and fuck up these rich old white fucks and give them a piece of their own medicine, a taste of their own medicine, so to speak. And he does, and it's so crowd-pleasing. Beats the fuck out of Dean. Missy tries to stab him with a knife or something. She stabs him in the hand, but then he uses it and turns it around on her and stabs her with it. Jeremy comes back and he tries to attack him again, but he gets away and manages to fuck him up and eventually manages to kill him for good. He drives away in Jeremy's car, and then Chris hits Georgina. And his guilt over his failure to help his mother forces him to take the unconscious Georgina with him. But then she awakens and attacks him because you find out that she actually was just a vessel. Her body was a vessel for Rose's grandmother's brain, just as Walter's is for Rose's grandfather. Rose and Walter catch up to Chris, but because he can't really run very fast because he's limping, Chris is able to use the phone's camera flash to free the real Walter from his sunken place. As with Logan earlier, Walter takes Rose's rifle and shoots her right in the stomach, and then he shoots himself in the head. Chris begins to strangle Rose, but he can't bring himself to kill her, and stops trying just as what looks like an apparent police car pulls up. Rose cries out for help, hoping that Chris will be seen as the attacker, which will get him arrested, but the driver turns out to be Rod in a TSA vehicle. And Chris and his buddy Rod, they drive away as Rose succumbs to her gunshot wound, and that's the film. And I love that ending. I love that this film actually ended positively. It was a happy ending. It deserved, I think this film deserved it. It earned that ending. Chris did not need to be in that situation. This twisted bullshit needed to end as soon as possible. And yeah, I think it earned it. It was a crowd pleasing film because of that, and I think it's one of the main reasons why the film was such a hit. Is because people could go back and see it over and over again, knowing that it doesn't have that bullshit downbeat ending. That I admittedly works in some films, but I don't think it would work in this movie. And interestingly enough, that was the original plan for the film. Jordan Peele, his original idea for the ending was for it to be downbeat. I mean, he originally intended for the film to end with Chris being arrested by the cops for the murder of Rose and her family. And he intended the scene as a reflection of the realities of racism. However, by the time production had begun, several high-profile police shootings of black people had, in his words, made the situation surrounding racism more woke, and he decided the film needed a happy ending for its lead. And I'm glad he made that decision, because I definitely would not like the film nearly as much without the ending that it does have. So, yeah, Get Out was a really great film. I can see why it gets such a high rating on IMDb, or an over 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. I definitely do feel that it's earned that, because, like I said earlier, I do not honestly have anything negative to say about this film. You can call me a homer all you want to, but honestly, I don't have any criticisms for this film. The score was great, the soundtrack choices were great, the performances were all great, the directing was fantastic. It was superb. The writing was wonderful. The idea was interesting and it was well executed. Everything that I could have wanted out of this film, I got, and then some. So, and I do agree with Jordan, who actually is quoted here. He says he stated that the genres of the horror genre and comedy. He says that horror and comedy are similar, and so that because so much of its pacing, so much of it is pacing, so much of it reveals. So he's talking about how the horror and comedy genres are all about pacing, and all about how something is revealed. And he really nailed it, because it really did help that he had so much experience doing all these comedy stuff. And honestly, some of the stuff he helped write for Key and Peele had sort of a horror slant to it as well. So it's not like he was completely going into it completely blind, but it was still a really impressive performance from a director to churn out and to turn to turn out to turn in a film that is so well directed like this. I mean, just knew how to set up his shots well. It didn't look like a first-time director directing this movie, or a first-time writer either. So, yeah, I don't know what else to say about Get Out, except if I was going to rate it out of 5 stars, I give it 5 out of 5, 2 thumbs up. I thought it was an unbelievably, just shockingly amazing film. It was a really wonderful experience. It was fun. It was entertaining. It was thought-provoking. It's definitely a film that I can't wait to add to my collection in the future. And once again, if you haven't seen it, you want my recommendation for it, here it is. I check it out. I cannot recommend it enough. And I've repeated myself multiple times saying that, but hey, I mean it. So anyway, thanks for watching, and as always, I will see you guys later. See ya.